All right, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh, everyone. So we will be, inshallah, continuing the adhkar that we've been doing for the past couple days, inshallah. So yesterday we did Dua al-Khuruj min al-Masjid, the different supplications that you would do in exiting the masjid. Now we're going to be doing the dua. Now remember how he was doing it? He was trying to take you, we would wake up and then we would, what do? We would, I guess, wear our new clothes, or how does it start? You would wake up and then, right, then we would get dressed according to his chronology. And then we would basically enter the bathroom, even though we kind of commented, we would use the bathroom and then we would wear our new clothes. But then we would leave the house and the dua to enter the house, and then we would go to the masjid, the dua for the masjid. We talked about that one. Okay. And now, since we are in the masjid, okay, what is the dua that we would do during al-adhan? First of all, I think it would be fair to break down al-adhan. Al-adhan, the word al-adhan literally means to give an announcement. Okay, but al-adhan became technically basically the announcement to the call for prayer, and in particular two things. So al-adhan itself is to announce the entrance in the beginning of that particular timing for that prayer. So that's one thing. The second one is to announce the congregation for that salah within the masjid. Okay, so the congregation would basically help us know that they're starting the congregation by hearing the adhan. Now, it's important to mention that there are some variants in the adhan. So you have adhan Bilal ibn Rabah and you have adhan Abu Mahdhura. So just some slight variants between whether we're going to be make it in 4 times or 2 times and certain parts of the dua, etc. But that's not what we're going to be discussing here. So we'll just make the story short. Okay. As for the different harmony that the dua is made in, there isn't a specific harmony that you would have to make the dua in. So you will see, for example, the harmony Ahl al-Hijaz, you would see the dua of al-Iraq, for example, slightly different. The dua for Bilad al-Sham is slightly different. The dua that al-Azhar probably makes is slightly different, or in Egypt, slightly different. But that's more of a harmony. It doesn't affect the actual meaning. Now, as for me hearing the adhan. Okay. Basically, number one, when you would hear the adhan, Allahu Akbar, you would basically say what the muadhin is saying. So here he says, يقول مثل ما يقول المؤذن إلا في حي على الصلاة وحي على الفلاح. So you would basically repeat the dhikr. So you repeat as the mu'adhin. What's a mu'adhin? It's basically the one who calls to the prayer. So if the mu'adhin is saying Allahu Akbar, you would simply say Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. You would simply say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. Yet, when the mu'adhin says Hayya ala salah, come to prayer, Hayya ala al-falah, come to success, then you as a listener, you would say, لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. Let's say, لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. There's no might, no power except with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the question is, well, if it's saying حي على الصلاة and حي على الفلاح, what does it have to do with لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله as a response? Well, that's in order to keep you connected with knowing if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is calling you to prayer and is calling you to success, it's not that He's in need for your prayer and it's not that He will be getting the success, but it's actually you will be getting the success and you will be getting the blessings for the prayer. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is letting you know that He is Al-Aziz, that He's self-efficient and He's not in need for anyone's submission, but you would actually be gaining the power, you would be gaining the mercy, you would be gaining the blessings of you accepting the call. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether all the people had submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or whether all the people had rejected Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that would not affect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's might. It would not affect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sovereignty, and certainly it would not affect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in any way, simply because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-Aziz, is the self-efficient, is al-Qawi, he is the mighty one, whether people submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not. So when we say la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, we're just reminding ourselves that such a submission, it's not for the benefit of Allah, but it's actually for your own benefit. It is for your own benefit because the Lord Almighty is basically almighty, and his might is not dependent on your submission, okay? And similarly, his power is not dependent on your submission either, for the Lord Almighty it eternally was always Al-Alim, Al-Ali, Al-Azim, Al-Kabir, Al-Qawi. He was always the mighty one. He was always for eternal. Eternally, he is the one that has all the sovereignty, the one that has all the authority, the one that has all the knowledge, the one that encompasses everything, and so forth. So when we're saying La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, we're taking that acknowledgement. Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is calling you to prayer. Yes, he's calling you to get to come to your success, but that's not meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in need for it, but that's to mean that you are the one that was programmed in needing such a prayer, in needing such a closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in needing such a call as a reminder. It is part of your program. It is part of your mind program, your brain, your body, your soul, and certainly it is part of your fitra program that you would need to be recharged in dhikr continuously and every single day. Okay, then you would another dhikr, وَأَنَا أَشْهَدُ أَن لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَحْدَهُ لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ وَأَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا عَبْدُهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. And immediately, basically after finishing the adhan, and you would say وَأَنَا أَشْهَدُ أَن لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَحْدَهُ لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله رضيت بالله ربا وبمحمد رسولا وبالإسلام دينا. And let's say, after the adhan was all completed, and I too bear witness that none has the right to be worshipped except Allah alone, without partner, and that Muhammad is his slave and messenger. I am pleased with Allah as a Lord and Muhammad ﷺ as a messenger, and Islam as a religion. Okay, so what are we doing here? So after hearing the adhan completed, now you're making that declaration again and taking in that full embracement by saying, and I too bear witness that, and I too declare that. You're taking in that announcement to make and announce your shahada each and every single time. You're reviving your Islam. Ibn Taymiyyah used to say something really important. He used to say, I would revive my conversion or my Islam every single day. Every single day is my shahada. Every single day is a declaration of shahada for myself. Every single day I would basically rejuvenate, and I would basically renew my shahada, my Islam every single day, whether you were born Muslim or whether you were a revert to Islam. Every single day do your shahada. يقول ذلك عقب تشهد المؤذن. When do we actually say this? So we would basically say it after the mu'adhin basically says أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. You would say that. Okay. يصلي على النبي بعد فراغه من إجابة المؤذن. So what should we do? Well, one should then send prayers on the Prophet after answering the call of the mu'adhin. So in other words, what do we say? Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, or wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad. So what does that even mean? Allahumma yusalli ala nabi ba'da faraghihi. What does it actually mean? So I basically got another page prepared, and this page basically has some different details for us and to help us understand how we would relate to all of this. So number one, when we're doing the Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, what we're doing is, number one, we're saying Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, and the reason and the evidence for that is basically based on a hadith, based on Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, that he had said. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا سَمِعْتُمُ الْمُؤَذِّنَ فَقُولُوا مِثْلَ مَا يَقُولُ ثم صلوا علي فإنه من صلى علي صلاة صلى الله بها 10 ثم سلوا الله لي الوسيلة فإنها منزلة في الجنة لا تنبغي لعبد إلا لعبد من عباد الله وأرجو أن أكون أنا هو فمن سأل لي الوسيلة حلت له الشفاعة. What is the story? So the Prophet ﷺ had said, if you hear the mu'adhin, then say what he's saying. Then make the peace and blessings, the invocation, the peace and blessings be upon me. That is the Prophet, peace be upon him. For whoever prays, that is, if you're praying on the Prophet ﷺ, you're not praying on the Prophet, but you're praying for the Prophet. Okay, you're praying for the Prophet. So why are we praying for the Prophet anyways? Because remember, every single person has a celebrity. When you are taking that moment to recognize the nobility and that this prophet that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sent is basically your celebrity, that's the way to acknowledge that he is the role model as a Muslim that I would take. So you would say, Ya Allah, how do I present that? How do I present that he is my celebrity? How do I present that he is my role model? How do I present that I appreciate the effort that he had invested in making me be a person that is right now following the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So what do I say? We would basically, the Prophet ﷺ taught us to say, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Ya Allah, forgive the Prophet. So why? Because you're acknowledging that the most important level that the Prophet himself was wanting to reach was to be a person that is in the highest rank with no sin. Therefore, you would also emulate that by taking that the rank that would make the Prophet be in the highest rank is of no sin. So you would emulate the path of the Prophet and emulate the mission and emulate the whole idea that he was trying to deliver, is that being on the path and being on the principle of the Lord Almighty is the highest pleasure. It is the highest rank that anybody could get. It is basically the most important thing that you would embrace and embrace completely. So therefore, فَإِنَّهُ مَنْ صَلَّى عَلَيْهِ. If you were to do it, well, does that mean that this is exclusive to the Prophet? What do I get? So the Prophet ﷺ says, Sallallahu alayhi biha ashran, and you in return will get the same kind of dua, sallallahu alayhi, just like you had said, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, Allahumma, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive you. May Allah subhanahu for 10 times. And the malaika would make the dua, Ya Allah, please forgive Noura. Ya Allah, please forgive Khadija. Ya Allah. And the malaika would basically be making that dua along with that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the malaika would rejoice in you coming in, asking for this presentation. So that Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad is actually to rejoice you coming in as well, and you are also included in all of this. Then he said, ثُمَّ سَلُوا اللَّهَ لِيَ الْوَسِيلَةَ. Then ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant me a certain path. Al-wasila is like asking for a certain path, a certain transition, or a certain pathway. But what is that? And the Prophet ﷺ said, well, it is actually a path to Jannah. Every single person that basically gets to Jannah is basically going through that path to Jannah. In other words, think of it as a highway. It's a highway that gets you to Jannah. So when you ask for al-wasila, you're like, Ya Allah, let me go into that highway that basically leads to Jannah. وَأَرْجُو أَنْ أَكُونَ أَنَا مِنْهُمْ. The Prophet ﷺ said, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I hope that I'm one of those people that will enter that pathway, that will enter that highway. So whoever asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that highway for the Prophet ﷺ, so you're basically saying, Ya Allah, include me in that highway and include me in that. So what are we saying right there? We're basically taking that moment to say, Ya Allah, he said, حَلَّتْ لَهُ الشَّفَاعَةِ. Then they will be the ones to be guaranteed to get through the intercession. What intercession? The intercession to basically enter. It's kind of like a green card to enter this pathway in al-Jannah, the pathway that leads to Jannah, by making Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Let's look at another one. من قال حين يسمع النداء اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته حلت له شفاعتي يوم القيامة. Another hadith, Jabir ibn Abdullah said, whoever hears the adhan, النداء means the call, that is the call to prayer. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة. Ya Allah, the Lord of this great and complete call and the prayer that is about to be presented, grant Muhammad the wasila, which is the path to Jannah, and give him the rank, and Ya Allah, revive him in the rank that you had promised him. And he said, whoever says that, then on Judgment Day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guarantee that they will get the intercession on Judgment Day. Okay, so you could see that in a number of different hadith, it was basically talking about al-wasila being basically a pathway in Jannah. Okay, so just keep that one in mind, and the way that we would respond when you could see this hadith. Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, who's actually one of the 10 people promised Jannah, he basically said that the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever says when they would hear the mu'adhin, أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله رضيت بالله ربا وبمحمد رسولا وبالإسلام دينا غفر له ذنبه. Let's see, the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever says, I bear witness that there is no God worthy of worship and I do not associate partners with him, and that Muhammad is the servant and the prophet of the Lord Almighty. I am content in the Lord Almighty being my Lord, and Muhammad is the messenger, and Islam is my religion and my faith, then their sins would be forgiven. So what is a sunnah to do between adhan and iqamah? Al-adhan is basically when the adhan, the call to prayer. But al-iqamah is when they're going to start officially the congregation for salah. What is there? So the Prophet ﷺ had said in a hadith, الدعاء لا يرد بين الأذان والإقامة فادعوا. There is an invocation that would not be rejected between adhan and the iqamah. The adhan, which is the call to prayer, and the iqamah is the official call to the congregation. That in between that time, which is almost 15 to 20 minutes, there is a prayer that is answered. In other words, this is a golden time for your prayer to be answered. So ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for whatever your needs are. whether it's in the need to probably memorize the Quran. Ya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, make us from those that would memorize the Quran and even have the 10 qira'at and be like Dr. Samia Harb. And Ya Allah, make us amongst those that would have their iman in practice, and make us from those that would have their light in their face, their light in their eyes, their light in their ears, their light in their heart, their light in front of them, their light in behind them, etc. Making that dua between al-adhan wal-iqamah. Okay, the Prophet ﷺ, in another hadith of Sahih ibn Sa'd, he said, ثنتان لا تردان أو قلما تردان الدعاء عند النداء وعند البأس حين يلحم بعضهم بعضا. He said 2 times, there are 2 instances where dua is not rejected. The dua when the call to prayer happens, and the dua when the 2 armies are basically facing one another. Okay, so another hadith عن عبد الله بن عمرو بن العاص أن رجلا قال يا رسول الله إن المؤذنين يفضلوننا قال قل كما يقولون فإذا انتهيت فسله تعطى. And this is one for the ladies. A man said, "O Prophet of Allah, the guys that are doing the adhan, they're basically, preferred over us. In other words, they would get a privilege that we're not getting." And that's probably some of the ladies. They're like, hey, why can't I be a mu'adhin and have the long neck that the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned that they would have on Judgment Day? So the Prophet ﷺ gave you that green card, and he said, sir, sure, all it needs, قُلْ كَمَا يَقُولُونَ, just say what he says. And if he finishes, and once you're finished, then ask, فَسَلْ تُعْطَى, and make the dua, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will answer your dua. So this is basically that card for us. Now let's go back to that dua that we were doing in Hisn al-Muslim. Allahumma rabba hadhihi ad-da'wati at-tamma, which is what we had just done, but I'll make it clear. Allahumma رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته. Okay, إنك لا تخلف الميعاد. You could see he basically put it in these parentheses, and what is that, 1 or 2? The parentheses one. Okay, so he said,
can I ask you a quick question?
Go ahead, Nora.
So if we have like a adhan clock in our house, is that the same?
It's not the same. It's not the same. The barakah is different. Okay, but even if you are to have the adhan in the house, it definitely has its own barakah. Okay, it has its
so
own
still
barakah.
do it.
It's still, absolutely, still do it, because the object is to repeat the dhikr. So whether you heard a virtual dhikr, so let's say right now, is this considered, right now, to you, I'm virtual. To you, I'm just, virtual. I know you know that I exist for real, but to you, I'm virtual. Does that mean whatever dhikr that I'm doing, for example, it's a recording of it, does that mean it's not going to be considered? It's considered, inshallah. So even if you're talking about a clock, a virtual thing, a virtual clock, or probably your phone, etc., it's a reminder of dhikr. It has the let's call it the inspiration that it will affect you to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whether the inspiration was, hey, you seeing the skies, or whether the inspiration was something virtual, or whether something automatic like a phone, the phone is not going to get the deeds, but you will get the inspiration and you will get the deeds. Okay, so simple as that. Okay.
Okay, jazakallah khair.
So the reason why he put that in parentheses right there, إِنَّكَ لَا تُخْلِفُ الْمِيعَادِ, he wanted to say that that particular one was actually mentioned in al-Bayhaqi, and he said, Ibn Bazi basically considered that was Hasan, okay, but that's not something that all scholars would agree on, but in the end, at least, we do know that there is a narration for that, إِنَّكَ لَا تُخْلِفُ الْمِيعَادِ, and scholars scholars disputed on its authenticity, but you would know that there is a tariqah, or there is at least a narration that basically said that, so it's not necessarily a bid'ah, okay? Just wanted you to know that. Okay, it's not necessarily a bid'ah to say innaka la tukhlifu al-mi'ad, because I do know that some people will say it's a bid'ah, you're not supposed to add it because it's not an authentic hadith, etc. That's not too accurate, to be honest, because for something to be a bid'ah would really have no trace of any authentic, or at least nothing hasan. Okay, so إِنَّكَ لَا تُخْلِفُ الْمِيعَادِ. Okay, at least that quote may not be at the highest level of authenticity, but it has some trace that some had actually said that it was something that the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned. Okay, but it does not necessarily mean that it is completely it was completely, let's say, not having any trace, because we already know that we found al-Bayhaqi and even other narrators include إِنَّكَ لَا تُخْلِفُ الْمِيعَادِ as part of that dhikr. So therefore, just to keep in mind, for something to be an innovation would be something that does not have any trace to the Prophet ﷺ. But this has a trace to the Prophet ﷺ. So it would not be an innovation, at least based on this narration. Okay, so we did translate that one. Let's see the English translation of what they had said. Let's see. O Allah, owner of this perfect call and owner of this prayer to be performed, bestow upon Muhammad ﷺ al-wasila and al-fadila. And we said al-wasila was a highway or a pathway to Jannah, and al-fadila is basically the word fadila, by the way. The word fadila means, it means a blessing. Okay, al-fadila means a blessing. So what is al-fadila? Al-fadila is that the Prophet ﷺ would be granted the privilege to be the intercessor on Judgment Day. That's al-fadila. Okay, that's that rank. And the Prophet ﷺ says, and send him upon a praised platform which you have promised him. Verily, you never fail in your promise. What is the praised platform? The praised platform is the intercession on Judgment Day, when Judgment Day happens and everyone is lined up. There's that moment where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is basically making everyone stand, and everyone is bewildered as to what's going to happen next. And where people are standing for hundreds and thousands of years, what's going to happen next? So the people would go to Prophet Ibrahim, they would go to Prophet Nuh, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They do recognize that there's going to be a time of resurrection. Well, they are already resurrected, but a time of accountability, a Jannah and a Nar. They do recognize, but they're not really sure when the official start is going to happen. So they're standing for a long time, and that's the time of al-Qiyamah. That's the day, what is called al-Qiyamah. Okay, so that al-Qiyamah, it is lasting for 50,000 years, 100,000 years, depending on the person, etc. And this is just a very long time to be standing for a long time. And what's going to happen next?
Are we gonna feel it like it's that long? Because
well,
I'm just wondering.
So for the Salihin, definitely, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون, tells us that the believers, that there's no fear and they would not feel sorrow, the humiliation. So there's definitely a privilege for the Salihin, but at the same time, there is a certain fear that everyone will feel. Everyone will, the fear that probably you as a parent might feel and might worry. Let's say, maybe I could give an example. Perhaps if we're talking about a first-time parent, okay, the fear that they would fear is different than a person that probably had 5 or 6 children. Yeah, she's worried, but it's like deja vu. I had seen this before, and yes, you're probably worried, but not exceptionally worried like a first-time mom that the first time that her baby would get a fever, is he gonna make it? Is it polio? And she's just all over the place, just imagining of all the worst diseases. But if it's a second time or a fifth time mother, she's like, yeah, just a couple days, and then they'll get these red spots on their body, and then they'll be okay. Yeah, they'll probably struggling to breathe, but they'll be okay. I'll just help them with some Vicks and all these different things, and they'll be okay. Now, when you compare the fears with the Salihin, yes, there is some fear, but it's not compared to the fear of the kuffar and those that were in sin. The fear of those, the kuffar and those that had committed the sin, they recognize that what they had basically committed, that this is the final announcement, that if this is bad, then for sure the accountability is going to be far worse. But the Salihin, they would recognize that if this is scary, for sure, inshallah, because of what I had presented, they would be at another place of fear, or at least in part of their hearts are containing the ease. لا خوف عليهم. They're basically content. They're basically living that certainty that they had presented good, they had lived the principle, and that's why they would basically say, فَأَمَّا مَنْ أُوتِيَ كِتَابَهُ بِيَمِينِهِ فَيَقُولُ هَاؤُمُ اقْرَءُوا كِتَابِيَهْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that those أَمَّا مَنْ أُوتِيَ كِتَابَهُ بِيَمِينِهِ, those that had received their book in their right hand, what would they say? هَاؤُمُ اقْرَءُوا كِتَابِيَهْ. Come everybody and just read the book. Come and see it. They're so happy about it. And then they would say, إِنِّي ظَنَنْتُ أَنِّي مُلَاقٍ حِسَابِيَهْ. I was certain. The word dhanna here is not doubt or skeptic. But the word dhanna here for the mu'mineen is to have faith, is to have certainty that we will be one day held accountable and gathered on this judgment day. And here it is, it's happening. And all the things that I had presented before are right now coming for the payoff. Right now is the day that it's basically going to be bringing the fruit, and I'm going to harvest it. So they would be at a certain level of fear for some of the things that they might have committed, but they would still be content that they had presented good, they had lived the principle, they had lived al-Iman, they had lived al-Amal al-Salih, and they would be living at a different place. Ya Allah, make us from those. So this is the praised platform. So in that moment, the people would go to the different prophets to ask the Prophet ﷺ to basically, or ask the different prophets to basically intercede, to start and basically expedite all of this. But that's when each and every single prophet would say, it's not me. I'm not the one to basically come in and ask for this privilege. It's not me. Then finally, they would say, Muhammad ibn Abdullah, he was the one that asked and made the dua to basically get the privilege and be the intercessor. It was something that he was the one that made the dua, that he wanted to be the person to do this. So that's when he would make a long sujood, be granted certain dhikr, and then he would be told, rise and make your call. In other words, what are you wanting? Or what do you want? And he would say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would tell him, اشفل سل تعطى واشفع تشفع. Make your call and intercede, and you will be granted the intercession to intercede basically for those that deserve the intercession. Okay. And right there, that's the praised platform. What platform? It's basically shafa'ah. Okay, الشفاعة, which you have promised him. What promised him? Basically to be the intercessor. Verily, you never fail our promise. So that verily you never fail our promise, that's basically what is in these parentheses. Or what do they call it? They don't call them parentheses, do they? Okay. يدعو لنفسه بين الأذان والإقامة فإن الدعاء حينئذ لا يرد. This number 26, that's not a dua. That's basically a direction. It's telling you, well, then in that situation, one should supplicate for himself during the time between the adhan, which is the call for the prayer, and the iqamah, which is the call for the congregation. A supplication at such time is not rejected. You know what I would have actually done to make it easy for someone? Probably the things that are directional, I'll probably put it in an italic, but yeah, maybe in the future, or maybe make it a different color or something, so for people would know the difference between a dua where the quote is and where the direction is. So this is it, everybody. We're just going to repeat, okay, and just these pages, okay, and basically, well, this one, hayya ala salah, hayya ala al-falah, we're just going to do la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, okay, because Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, we already know that one. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد رسول الله. We already had done that one. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. There's no might nor power except with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No might nor power except with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, after finishing, وأنا أشهد, okay, أن لا إله إلا الله. Here it is, وأنا أشهد. So just giving you that one. أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله. وأنا أشهد means and I bear witness. أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله. رضيت بالله ربا وبمحمد رسولا. رضيت بالله ربا وبمحمد رسولا وبالإسلام دينا. So here he says يقول ذلك عقب تشهد المؤذن. That means you would say that after basically the tashahhud, the tashahhud basically, which is when he says أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله, after the mu'adhin says that. Okay, let's see. وأنا أشهد.
What does aqiba mean?
Aqiba means after.
Oh, subhanallah.
Yeah, after. So after the mu'adhin. Okay. وأنا أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله. رضيت. You can do it. وأنا أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. This one we've done it before. So go ahead, Noura, or everybody together.
I was trying to get Yusuf to tell you salam before he left for work. Okay.
Oh, mashallah, he works. What does he do?
He is a lifeguard at the community center, but he goes like really, really early when nobody's there.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, go ahead, Noura. وأنا أشهد.
وأنا أشهد أن لا إله. What?
I'm calling on everybody, whoever wants to do it along with you. It's okay too.
Come on, guys, you get the ajr too. Come on, yalla.
Exactly. So whoever wants to unmute themselves and do it together, that's okay too. وأنا أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له.
Okay. وأنا أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله.
رضيت بالله
رضيت
ربا
بالله ربا
رب
وبمحمد
محمد رسولا
رسولا
رسوله.
وبال
Is that okay if I learned something different?
Yeah, I think I wanted to say وبالإسلام دينا
Yeah,
وبمحمد
وإسلام دينا
وبمحمد
وبمحمد
صلى
صلى
الله
الله
عليه
عليه
وسلم
وسلم نبيا.
That's okay. That's okay. It gives the same meaning.
Oh, okay,
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So let's do this one. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة. اللهم
اللهم
رب
رب
هذه
هذه
الدعوة التامة.
الدعوة التامة
التامة
والصلاة القائمة.
والصلاة
القائمة.
آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة.
آت
محمدا
وسيلة
الوسيلة وفضيلة
والفضيلة
والفضيلة
وابعثه مقاما
وبعثه مقاما
مقاما
محمودا
محمودا
الذي وعدته.
الذي وعدته
إنك
وإنك
إنك
ما في واو. اوكي إنك
لا تخلف
لا تخرج
الميعاد.
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 Good job. Good job. So this is it, inshallah. This one is you would make the dua for you between adhan and iqamah. That's what it says.
So short.
It's short.
The class is so short.
It is. I'm usually, a person that would take 2 hours. So all of a sudden, to actually make it in 45 minutes, it kind of feels like something's wrong, right?
We missed
So
the tafsir. We missed it.
I know. No, inshallah, we're going to go back to it. So 10 days left, inshallah, and we'll go back to our tafsir.
Inshallah.
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 Allah grant us good health and long life.
Inshallah. Tomorrow we'll take dua al-istiftah. That one is pretty exciting. So
What is istiftah? What is it?
Al-istiftah is okay. So in Lugha Arabiya, the alif sin ta means to
To
request.
ask, yes.
Exactly. So what are you asking? You're asking for a
Istiftah.
great opening.
Opening?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah. So kind
See,
of like the clarity of things. Well, it's to open locked doors, to open locked ideas, locked, all these different things. So you're basically asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Like a key from key?
A key. There you go. There you go. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like a muftah. Muftah
Yeah,
is also
yeah.
coming in with it.
yeah.
All right.
Alhamdulillah.
Good job. Good job.
Alhamdulillah.
All right.